Hey there, mamas. Today we're going to be doing some pre-fitteds. And what a pre-fitted is it's a pre-fold that's been made into a fitted diaper. I once had this bag of pre-folds that were from a local diaper service. And they were really worn out, and they had especially a lot of fraying on the edges and the tops. And they were really great for using for pre-fitteds. I don't have any more of those anymore, but one thing that you can do is use just a regular old pre-fold if you want to try it out. This is a shrunk and prepped infant pre-fold. That's like the second smallest size. The newborn sizes will not work for a pre-fitted because you lose what's called functional rise when you turn a pre-fold into a fitted, because you lose the space that would have been the elastic. This is what an infant pre-fold looks like before it's been prepped, before it's been shrunk. So it loses quite a lot just in the shrinking too. So you want to keep that in mind when you're making them. This is a regular size Cotton Babies, I think, pre-fold. It's quite a lot bigger than the infant. This one has been shrunk a few times, but not as much as this. And then this is a different brand. I think it's Green Mountain Diapers Premium. So they're all a little bit different. And these are all older ones that I now use as rags. But I'm going to use them for making pre-fitteds this week. I'm going to start off with a small one because I'm making a newborn stash. But the way you decide what you want to make is by taking whatever template you're going to use, or you want to use, and laying it over and seeing how much you're actually going to lose on that rise. So this is a one size or a medium to large size fitted template. And what you notice when you lay it over, that it's actually about 3/4 of an inch too short vertically. So if you're going to use this for your template, you'd have to shrink the rise on that a little bit as well. And it won't matter, it'll be fine. But when you move it, you're going to lose that size through the middle. You want to keep the back and the front. So if you were going to be tracing it, you would move it down to just below the top, and then you would draw your kind of lines in washable marker or in chalk to get a rough idea. And then you'd move the front up to above the seam here, and you would draw your lines, there. Then once you have it, you're going to have to take whatever your seam is. They're all a little different. Pre-folds are not consistent. And you're going to make sure that you have at least 3/4 of an inch outside of that inner seam there. So pre-folds just have these two seams down the middle where they're quilted. And you're going to want to make sure that you are going about 3/4 of an inch outside of that seam. So when you draw this, it might end up being inside. You're going to then shift it a little bit. So you're not going to be able to exactly overlay a pattern. You're going to have to do some manipulating. I'm going to take my washable marker, which I have right here, and I'm just going to do some light dotted lines around the edge of it. I'm going to be shifting it later. So just to get a general idea of where the outside of this pattern actually aligns with the pre-fold. So you've got your rough little lines here, and you'll see it's too far over on this side. It's too close to the seam because this is an uneven line. This pre-fold has its seams way over to the side here. So now you're just going to shift it. So you're going to take your line here, and you're going to move it out 3/4 of an inch outside, and you're going to draw your repaired line. And just kind of modify the shape a little bit. So there's your new line that you've sort of modified outwards. And so on this side, you can go in a little bit. But you're going to leave the wings uneven because that doesn't matter. And if you're using a snappy, it'll help to have longer wings. So one will be a little longer than the other if it's super uneven like this. But it won't matter. It'll still fit the same way. It would just not be even wings. It's more important to have it even through the leg elastic. And this is a washable marker. It'll wash out after a couple washes. And I don't draw it really dark. Now you've got your sort of modified shape. And some prefolds are more consistent. Like some prefolds, you could take them and you could really just draw a template right over it and it'll work. You just want to, know what you have. You can also turn a contour into a fitted. You could turn a flat fold into a fitted. You could turn towels into a fitted. You can make anything into a fitted. So I'm going to do a basic surged fitted first, but then tomorrow, or maybe the next day, I'm not sure yet, I'm going to do a what I call detail-oriented fitted, which is a turned and top stitched, but not actually turned, a sort of artificially turned. It looks like it's turned, but it's not. And don't throw those away, they're going to be your soaker. Next, we're going to take our pieces that we cut off the edges, and if you're using an already prepped prefold, you might want to iron these flat. You're going to take them and you're going to fold them open. It should be 2 layers. So you could take a straight edge and you can just kind of clean up the sides. Now the next thing that I do is I open up these sides here, and this is the side where it's folded on, so there's not excess. But this is the side that has the extra layers from where the prefold was folded, and sometimes there's a big chunk of flat fabric there. Luckily on this one there's not, so I only need to trim out a tiny bit here at the front. But if it's one of those prefolds where they haven't caught a lot of the inner fabric, sometimes it goes out like an inch or more, and then you just take it and you cut off a tiny bit so that it's easier to run your elastics through that. It's going to be where your elastic casing channel is going to be. So you just cut off the excess. This one doesn't need very much though, that's all. But sometimes there is a lot, so you do want to open them up and look. The first thing I'm going to do, even with the serged version, is sew. You do need both a sewing machine and a serger for the serged version. You only need a straight stitch though. You don't need anything fancy. And it can be a very wide straight stitch. It doesn't have to be anything fancy at all. Okay, so at this point, you're going to go and you're going to kind of trace in your casing lines. You're going to go about, 1/4 inch or a little bit more from the edges where your serge line is going to be, but only the length of your elastic casing. And you can leave your tails on because your serger will cut them. So there's my first line. It's a little bit hard to see, but you can kind of see it. And now I'm going to shift it over and make my full elastic casing inset from that. So I'm going to make sure I leave plenty of room, especially since this is an unprepped prefold that I'm using. It's going to shrink. So I want to make this a little wider than my typical elastic casing. And there's my extra wide pre-sewn elastic casing channel. And do the other side too. So now you've got your 2 wide elastic casing channels outside of your middle seams on your prefold. You get your nice shaping. And at this point, we're going to feed our elastics just like we do on a regular fitted, on regular diaper. But, we're just going to ignore these raw edges. You want to be careful to not let them fray excessively while you're doing this. Just, don't handle them. We're going to be then going and serging along there to clean up the edges when we're all done. I tend to leave pre-fitteds a little bit looser than regular fitteds, so they last a little bit longer. But since this one isn't pre-shrunk, I'm going to do it a little bit tighter than I typically would, just to make sure that once it shrinks, it'll still have some room, some stretch. You still want to be able to make sure that you can stretch it all the way out. Okay, so here's a couple options at this point. You don't need to do back elastic on a pre-fitted. It is just fine, serged like this. But one way that you can do back elastic is just by opening up this rear seam. On one side, it'll be overlapped. You can just get a seam ripper and just pop a few of those stitches. You can sew your little channel just across that mid part there, and you could run your elastic just right through that one part of it so that you have a little bit of a pull together at the back. And this is totally optional. A lot of people prefer to have their backs not elasticized for pre-fitted so that they fit a little bit longer, just like how I like to make my leg elastics not super tight. It's the same kind of preference. You can trim off the little edge of your elastic there that shows. Now you've got this nice little pretty clean edge. You can't even see it. And now you're going to go and you're going to pull this elastic to a little bit of tension. Not a lot, just a little. And I like to pin it here because I'm going to be sewing it down. So I'm going to pin it out beyond where the casing is. And then I'm going to do the same thing on that end, and I'm going to zigzag down on that end. You can do a straight stitch too, but I like to do the zigzag to really hold it down and close it up. And then cut off your edge right at the edge of that seam there. You won't even be able to see it. See? It's all gone. And now you've got your back elastic too. But you don't have to do that one. That one's totally optional. And now I've got my serger out, and all you're going to do is make sure that your foot is up, so you're going to be cutting. And you're going to pull it tight, and you are going to serge that edge closed on the side there. And then after you get to the front, you could either round the corner at the front here, or you can just do 2 separate seams. I think I'll probably round mine. And this is just to clean up that edge and close up the outside. So now you've got your base pre-fitted. Got your tag still on there if it had one. Cleaned up my threads. Now at this point, you can serge your little inner soaker and sew it into the body of it. One thing I like to do is take a smaller size. This one's the same size, but if it was a smaller size, like if you still have your newborn or your preemie pre-folds, you could then trifold them and put them in as your soaker for your bigger size one, which is a great amount of absorbency. So if you're using your infant pre-fold and your preemie pre-fold together, or your newborn pre-fold together as a soaker diaper combo, it's a great way to get more bang for your buck. It's a great overnight diaper, like really, really good. My daughter, when she was bigger, I would use a premium pre-fold and then an infant tri-folded pre-fold. And that was like the best underneath a fleece soaker or a wool cover. She could sleep for hours. My son never slept as long as my daughter did, but she could sleep forever with that thing. So now I'm just gonna serge my little insert. And now you've got your little soaker piece, your little insert made from the wings. They fit right in, remember? So now you could lay that in and sew that down just in the middle at the back, and it becomes a doubler. So you could make it toward the back, closer to the back from the middle if you've got a girl, but if you have a boy, I recommend sewing it onto the front here, or close to the front, maybe an inch down. And that'll be a better wet zone protection for a boy. Or you can just keep it as a lay-in. You can fold it. Lots of options. So there is your basic serged pre-fold turned into a fitted or pre-fitted diaper. These are snappable because they're made with pre-folds. You can use them with other size pre-folds to make really good absorbency. There's your little finished pre-fitted diaper. Happy sewing.